Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn the Rashis and Masechta Shabbos on Daf Chesamad Aleph and Daf Chesamad Beis. Let's begin. Ula said Amud Tisha, a post that's 9 tfachim high. Says Rashi, Dafka Nokat. He specifically chose it, this number 9, the Chazi Liktufe, because it's fitting to adjust in it when it's that height. The Einoi Loi Gavoya Veloy Namuch, because it's not high and not low. So he said if there's such a post, Vizorak, and a person threw, Mitchilas Dalad L'Seif Dalad, he threw an item from the beginning of 4 Amos to the end of 4 Amos, he's Chayiv, because the post is part of the Rishus Harabim. And the Gemara explained why is it part of the Rishus Harabim? Because when it's 9 Tfachim high, Miktefui Ilayu, they adjust on it, people adjust items on it. Explains Rashi, V'kevan that Sarach L'Rabim, and since it's needed by the public, Rishus Harabim, who it's a Rishus Harabim. Bein Rachav, Bein Kasser, whether it's wide, whether it's narrow. At times we see that we distinguish if something is 4 Tfachim by 4 Tfachim wide or less. In this case, we don't. Either way, people use this post to adjust items in it. Therefore, it's needed by the public and it's considered part of the Rishus Harabim. The Gemara then asked a question, Guma, a pit, a muka tes, which is 9 Tfachim deep, what's the din? What about a pit that's 9 Tfachim deep? So Rashi explains the question, Gabi Rishus HaYachid, the Asara, regarding Rishus HaYachid being 10 Tfachim deep high, Tanya le'el, we learned earlier in a Brisa, its depth is like its height. Just like if it's 10 Tfachim high, it's a Rishus HaYachid. Also, if it's 10 Tfachim deep, it's a Rishus HaYachid. Diktani, for it says in the Brisa, Choretz Amik Yud V'Rochav Dalid, a pit that's 10 Tfachim deep and 4 Tfachim by 4 Tfachim wide, Rishus HaYachid is a Rishus HaYachid. So, Hachamai, what about here? Do we say that just like the post that's 9 Tfachim high is part of the Rishus Harabim, so too the pit that's 9 Tfachim deep is part of the Rishus Harabim? And why would we say it's part of the Rishus Harabim? The post people use. How do they use the pit? So Rashi explains, Mi Amrinon, do we say, Manchi Bei B'nei Rishus Harabim Chafetzim Shebeyadim, the public Rishus Harabim place in it the items in their hands, Ad Hadri, until they return, Va'asu Derech Sham, and come by that way of the pit where they place their items, V'Shaklile, and they take it, V'Nimtza, and it comes out, Shetzrichim Le'Rabim, that the public need it. They need this pit, they use it to put items in it for a short while. Hilkach Rishus Harabim, therefore it's a Rishus Harabim. So Rav Yosef said it is a Rishus Harabim, and Rava said, Gumalei, not a pit. My time, what's the reason? Because because usage that's inconvenient isn't considered usage. Using a pit is not convenient. We don't consider that being used. And therefore, therefore it's not needed by the public. We don't call that needed by the public when it's inconvenient. Rather it's a karmelis. So if it's 9 tfachim deep and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, it'll be a karmelis just like if it's 8 tfachim deep and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide. So the Gemara then presented 2 questions on Rava, and these questions were based on brises. So one of the first brises said, Ein metaltlin, one may not carry from, if there was a box that's 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, one may not carry from the box to the Rishus Harabim, from the Rishus Harabim to the box. The reason, says Rashi, the have a Rishus HaYachid la'atzmim, because it's a Rishus HaYachid for itself. It's 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide. Pachas mikain, less than this, says the brisa. If it's less than 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, so Rashi explains, either in height or in width. If either one of these measurements is less than the amount that we mentioned, of 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, either the height or the width, metaltlin, one may carry. A person is allowed to carry from the box to the Rishus Harabim, from the Rishus Harabim to the box. And Rashi now is going to ask a question, and that is, when the box is 9 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, it should be a karmelis. It's above the Rishus Harabim, it's not part of the Rishus Harabim, and it's not yet 10 tfachim to be a Rishus HaYachid, it's a karmelis. So Rashi asks, V'im Taimar, and if one asks, Pachas miyud or Rechava dalid, karmelisi, less than 10 tfachim, and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide is a karmelis. The answer is like Gazer Rabbanon levatule materas kelim. The Rabbanon didn't decree to nullify it from the rules or the status of kelim. Hoyle v'kli, since it's a kli. So Rashi is saying, Ein karmelis b'kelim. There's no karmelis by kelim. And therefore, although if it wasn't a kli, it would be a karmelis. Since it is a kli, it's not a karmelis. So the Brisa concluded and said, V'chein beguma. We spoke about a box. We said a box that's 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide. And we spoke about a box that's less than this. And then we said, V'chein beguma, the same as by a pit. So says the Gemara in its question, my lav, is it not? Hi v'chein. This and so too. We said, and so too by a pit. A seifa namika also goes on the seifa. Whatever we said about the box, both the ratio about the box and the seifa. V'chein beguma also applies to a pit, which is, what does it say in the seifa? The pachas mikein metal l'chatchila. We said that less than this, less than 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, one may carry l'chatchila. So it says that a person is allowed to carry from a pit that's less than 10 tefachim deep. Now it can't be referring to 8 tefachim deep, because that's a karmelis. A person can't carry from a karmelis to Rishus Harabim. So it must be referring to a pit that's 9 tefachim deep. So alma Rishus Harabim chashavli. So we see that he considers it a Rishus Harabim. And Rashi points out what we just mentioned, v'ukma ba'oimik tes. And we established it by 9 tefachim deep, because less than 10, by 8 it would be a karmelis. So what's less than 10 and could be permitted to carry from it to Rishus Harabim? Only if we say that by 9 tefachim it's part of the Rishus Harabim. So v'ukma ba'oimik tes, and we establish it by a 9 tefachim deep pit, the mishtamshem beiksas, that they use it a little bit. Although it's inconvenient, they still use it a little bit. So Rava responded, Loi, no, our ratio, it's going on the ratio. When we said v'chein beguma, we're saying what we said in the ratio about the box also applies to a guma, a pit. What did we say in the ratio, says Rashi? Agvoya yud rechava dalid, on what's 10 tefachim high and 4 by 4 tefachim wide, the hava rishus hayachid, that it's a rishus hayachid, katani, it says v'chein beguma, and so too by a pit. Just like a box that's 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide is a rishus hayachid, and therefore a person cannot carry from it to the rishus harabim, and from the rishus harabim to it, so to a pit that's 10 tefachim deep and 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide is also rishus hayachid, and a person can't carry between it and the rishus harabim. Then we brought down another brisa to challenge Rava, and it said over there, "Niskaven lishbeis v'rishus harabim." If he intended to rest in rishus harabim, what's this talking about here? So explains Rashi, "Hama'arev a ruvei tchumen." One who is ma'arev, a ruvei tchumen, he makes an erev tchumen. The way it works is as follows: a ruvei koinelei shvisasei sham. His erev acquires him his resting there. So Rashi now is explaining to us the idea of erev tchumen. So again, ma'arev a ruvei tchumen, one who is ma'arev a ruvei tchumen, a ruvei koinelei shvisasei sham. His erev acquires from his resting place over there where the erev is. And what does that accomplish? Sheyuchal leilach misham l'chol ruach. Alpayim, that he can go from there in any direction to every direction, 2,000 amas, ki ilu shavas sham, as if he rested there. So if he places an erev tchumen, it's considered as if that's his place. And like we'll see in a moment, even though he didn't actually spend Shabbos there, but that's considered his place. Ki ilu shavas sham, as if he was there. The rule is, and he has to have intent to acquire his resting, in a place that he can eat his erev there, if he would want to eat it. So it has to be that the person has the place that he intends as my resting place, and it has to be a place where he's able to eat over there the food. So if he places the food in the Rishus HaYachid and has intention to rest in the Rishus HaRabim, it won't be a good erev. So he has to have in mind a certain place, and it has to be a place where over there, in that place, he can eat his erev. So it has to be right nearby, if it's in the Rishus HaRabim, within 4 amas. That through this, that he could eat his erev there, his erev works for him to acquire a resting place where he intended. Why does the erev work? Why does food work? The makim pita gerim, because the place of bread causes. When we say causes, it means that's what matters to us in this regard. The hasam shayich inish, since there's the place of a person, so that's what's going to make the difference where the food is. And even though he's in the city when the day is niskadish, when Shabbos came in, he might be in the city. But the point is, he has in mind to rest in a certain place. He has food right nearby, and he can get the food that's right nearby and eat it in the place that he had in mind to rest. So if it's all in a small area, it's fine. So the Brisa says over there, if he placed it in a pit, it depends. If it's lamayla miyud, it's a good erev, and if it's lamata miyud, it's not a good erev. So the Gemara, Rashi here quotes that what it says, lamayla miyud tfachim erev, higher than 10 tfachim, his erev is an erev. Kasaka daitach the yochad litli b'Shabbos. We thought it's because he can take it on Shabbos, because later on we're going to say that it's not necessarily on Shabbos, it could be being a shmashes. So Rashi is saying at this point we understand that it's telling us he's able to take the food from the pit and eat it outside of the pit on Shabbos. So the Gemara asks, what does this mean when it says higher than 10 and lower than 10? If we will say it's by a pit that has 10 tfachim, omeik, deep. So it's 10 tfachim deep, at least. So let's say 15 tfachim. So if we're going to say it's referring to one pit, that's 15 tfachim deep. and Lamaila Meyud, it's a good Erev, and Lamata is not a good Erev. What does that mean? Umaila Maila, and what's higher? What does it mean higher than 10 Tfachim? Didallah Iva Oisve, that he lifted it up and set it down. He set it down in the upper 5 Tfachim of the pit. Shehigbiyai Vihinichai Lamaila Meyud, that he lifted it up and set it down higher than 10 Tfachim, Mikarka Isil Shalbar, from the ground of the pit. So it's in the upper 5 Tfachim, it's out of the lower 10 Tfachim. Umayla Mata, and what's lower? The Tatoiv Oisve, that he lowered it and set it down, meaning in the lower 10 Tfachim. The words of Rashi won't be so clear, but that's what it means. Shehishpiloi Vihinichai, that he lowered it and set it down and placed it. Lemata Miyud Hatachtenim, lower than the lower 10 Tfachim. It means in the bottom 10 Tfachim. So if we're going to say that's what it means, says the Gemara, Amay Eruv Erev. Why when it's in the higher 5 Tfachim, is his Erev an Erev? Harei Abar Rishus HaYachid. But the bar, the pit, is the Rishus HaYachid. Misfas Oignoi Ulamata, from the edge of the rim and lower. If this pit is 15 Tfachim deep, the whole pit is a Rishus HaYachid, not just the bottom 10 Tfachim. And anything placed in it is placed in the Rishus HaYachid. So why would this be a good Erev? And since he intended that his resting be in a Rishus HaRabim, and he didn't place his Erev on the edge of the pit, which is also the Rishus HaRabim. Rather, he placed it in the pit, which is the Rishus HaYachid. It comes out that he's in one place, in the Rishus HaRabim, and his Erev is in another place, in the Rishus HaYachid. And he cannot carry it out from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim to eat it, so it's not a good Erev. So the Gemara said it must be Elalav, is it not? That this that it says higher than 10 Tfachim, it doesn't mean in the same pit. It's Bibar the Les Beyud. It's by a pit that doesn't have 10 Tfachim in it. And this is what he said. If the floor of the pit is lower than 10 Tfachim, that the pit is 10 Tfachim deep, and it's a Rishus HaYachid, then in that case, his Erev isn't an Erev anywhere that it's placed there, anywhere in that pit. If it's a pit that's 10 Tfachim deep, it's not a good Erev. And if the floor of the pit is above 10 Tfachim, that it's less than 10 Tfachim deep, the emptiness of the pit is less than 10 Tfachim. Erev is an Erev. Now, if he's in Rishus HaRabim, and it's 9 Tfachim, and let's say it's 9 Tfachim deep, it shouldn't be a good Erev because it's a Carmels. This is a Rishus HaRabim. So we see and it's not considered like it's resting in a Carmels. He doesn't consider it. It should be he doesn't consider it. He doesn't consider it like it's resting in a Carmels. So we see that he considers it to be significant. Alma. So we see Tashmish L'Rabim, that he considers to be significant the use of the public. So Alma Tashmish L'Rabim Choshev, he considers it to be significant the Tashmish of Rabim. Alma. So we see Tashmish L'Rabim, the use of the public Choshev, he considers to be significant. So what we see over here is it says if it's less than 10 Tfachim deep, it's a good Erev. Now if it's 8 Tfachim, 7 Tfachim, it's going to be a Carmelis. It won't be a good Erev. So it must be the one that's 9 Tfachim deep. So we see he's telling us that 9 Tfachim deep is the Rishus HaRabim. Says Rava gave 2 answers to this. One answer is Hu ve'eruv be'karmelis. He and his Erev were in a Carmelis. It was all in a Carmelis, and therefore it's a good Erev because he's in a Carmelis, the Erev is in a Carmelis. So within 4 Amos, he could use it. How could it be that him and the Erev are in a Carmelis? What's an example? For example, that this pit was an area of fields, and we know that a bika is a Carmelis. And he intended to rest on its rim. So he's intended to rest in a Carmelis. Uber Nami, and also the pit. Kavan, the loy amegyud Carmelis, since it's not 10 Tvachim deep, it's a Carmelis. So Rava responded that no, it is a Carmelis. Why is his Erev a good Erev if it's in a Carmelis and he's in a Rishus HaRabim? Because he's not in a Rishus HaRabim, he's in a Carmelis. Now this creates a question. The question is that it says if he had in mind to rest in a Rishus HaRabim, how could Rava say he had in mind to rest in a Carmelis? Said the Gemara, and why does he call it a Rishus HaRabim? Where does he call it a Rishus HaRabim? Because it says Nishskavin Lishbeis Rishus HaRabim. He intended to rest in a Rishus HaRabim. So he explains Lefisha ain't a Rishus HaYachid because it's not a Rishus HaYachid. When it says Rishus HaRabim, it just means to say not a Rishus HaYachid. Why are we not talking about a Rishus HaYachid? The ilu avoy hai bar b'chatzer, because if this pit was in a yard, if he did have in mind to rest in the yard, which is the Rishus HaYachid, and he placed it in a pit, then we wouldn't say if it's deeper than 10 tefachim, it's not a good Eruv. It would be a good Eruv, because he's in Rishus HaYachid and less than 10 tefachim, and if it's deeper than 10 tefachim, it's also Rishus HaYachid. So he would be able to carry it. Afilu Omek Yud Eruv, even if it's 10 tefachim deep, his Eruv is an Eruv. So when it says Rishus HaRabba, it means to say not a Rishus HaYachid, because there, if the pit is 10 tefachim deep, it will be a good Eruv. So that's one answer that Rav would give. V'zimnin Meshani Lei, and at times he answered with a different answer. That Rishus HaRabim Davka Katoni. He precisely said Rishus HaRabim. It was a Rishus HaRabim. Ubarshu Pachis Miyud Karmelis Avai. And a pit that's less than 10 tefachim is a Karmelis. 9 tefachim deep, it's a Karmelis. Why? Kedam Rina on the Leishmei Tashmish. Like we said, it's not considered usage. It's not convenient. In this day you have a question, how can he take it out? Why is it a good Eruv? The Eruv is in the Karmelis. He's in the Rishus HaRabim. Al korchach knias eruv bein hashmashis isa kishkodesh hayim. Al korchach, it must be that knias eruv, that the acquiring of the eruv bein hashmashis isa is bein hashmashis kishkodesh hayim, when the day becomes mekodesh. The acquiring of the eruv, it takes effect not that the whole Shabbos it becomes acquired. It's acquired by bein hashmashis. V'hu safek yom safek laila, and it's a safek, it's a doubt of its day, and safek laila, it's a doubt of its night. Bein hashmashis is between the previous day and the night. It's a doubtful time whether it's part of the day or part of the night. The Rebbe, this teaching follows Rebbe that says that the Eruv is a good Eruv. It follows Rebbe, the Omer that said Be'eruv. And Rebbe says this in Eruvin. The Shvus shegazru chachamim be'isuri Shabbos. That a Shvus that the Chachamim decreed in the prohibitions of Shabbos, anything that's midrabanan, like gazru alei ella b'Shabbos vaday. They only decreed on it when it's certainly Shabbos, v'loy bein hashmoshes, and not bein hashmoshes. So the time that the Eruv takes effect is bein hashmoshes. And the teaching that this is a valid Eruv fits with Rebbe, who says that by bein hashmoshes we don't have any asur midrabanan. So what comes out? Hilkoch, therefore, Mikarmelis Rishus HaRabim Shvus Ba'amuhu. From a Karmelis to Rishus HaRabim is only a Shvus. It's only midrabanan. Ubein hashmashos roi litloi misham lo ichloi. And bein hashmashos, it's fitting to take it from there and eat it, because there is no isur midrabanan. And lefichoch kana eruv. Therefore, he acquired his eruv. So even though he's in a Rishus HaRabim and the eruv is in a Karmelis, it's okay, because the isur is only midrabanan, and it has to take effect by bein hashmashos, where according to Rebbe there are no isurim midrabanan. And then Rebbe continued and said, and not with a push off, I'm pushing you off. Rather, I'm saying it specifically. It's not that I'm giving another way of learning these brises so that it won't be difficult for me, says Rava. Rather, the way I'm learning them must be the way we learn it. The Leishmei Tashmish L'Rabim. He says, I'm not pushing you off by saying that it's not considered usage for the public. The regular way of learning the brises indicates that a pit that's 9 tefachim deep is part of the Rishus HaRabim. Rava gave us an alternative way that it's not. Says Rava, it's not just that I'm pushing you off to say that it's not. Rather, we must say that it's not. And then that's why it was in light blue, because he's bringing a proof. And what is it? We bring down a bris where it says rikak. A rikak is a pool. So it says Rashi, he brings a word from French, which means earth mixed with water, umayim tzafal malav, and water floating on it. So it's mud with water. Rishus HaRabim aleches boy, and the Rishus HaRabim walks in it. Sha'evrim ba'eser rikak birakleim. That they pass in that pool of water with their feet. So he said, and what's the depth of such a pool? Pachas miyud, less than 10 tefachim, she'ena mayim amukim yud, that the waters aren't 10 tefachim deep. So if there was a pool of water that's not 10 tefachim deep, that the public walked through it, and somebody threw an item in it from 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim, and it landed into it, the din is chayev, he is chayev for throwing 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim. Shehuka Rishus HaRabim Gemara, because it's like a complete Rishus HaRabim. So the Gemara asked, why does the Brisa say this teaching twice? A pool of water that the public walks in, if somebody throws in it from a distance of 4 amos, he's chayev. And then it says again, a pool of water that the public walks in, and somebody threw into it from a distance of 4 amos, he's chayev. So he said, why does it have to say it twice? We can understand why it says a pool of water twice. One is for the summer, and one's for the rainy season. But why do we need walking twice? It didn't need to say that. Says Rashi, what should have it said? Listen to Seifa, let him say in the Seifa, or Rekak Mayim Sheberishus HaRabim, a pool of water that's in the Rishus HaRabim, Azerik L'Seicha, one who throws into it, Chayiv is Chayiv. It could have said a pool of water in the Rishus HaRabim that the public walks through, one who throws in it is Chayiv. A pool of water in the Rishus HaRabim, One who throws in it is chayiv. Why do I have to say twice that the public walked through? Rosh Hashanah boy, the Rosh Hashanah walk in it, that they walk in it, lashmi'inan debe'inan she'itzerich l'rabim, lamali. Why do we need it? Lamali was translated first. Lamali, why do we need it? Lashmi'inan, to teach us the be'inan that we require she'itzerich l'rabim, that it should be needed by the public. Why do we need it to teach that to us? But we learn it from the Resha. We already learned from the Resha that it has to be used by the public. Rather, the explanation says the Gemara is rather, for this he taught it again. The explanation is that dafka sheyehei hiluch l'rabim, specifically that it should be for the public to walk. Even though it is inconvenient, shmei hiluch, it's considered walking. We consider it real walking, and it's part of the Rosh Hashanah. And the reason he writes it twice is to tell us that walking that's inconvenient is considered walking. Walking that's inconvenient is considered walking. But if it's needed by the public to use, not to walk, it's not considered a rishus for the rabbim. So the reason it says walking twice is to emphasize walking that's inconvenient is considered walking. Walking that's inconvenient is considered walking, but not using. So that's the explanation that Rava gave. We see clearly that tashmish l'idei chak is lo yishmei tashmish. Then we brought a teaching from Rabbi Yehuda about zirza de kani, a bundle of reeds. It says Rashi, chavila shel kanim arukim. It's a bundle of long reeds. So Rabbi Yehuda said, Rama v'zakfei, Rama v'zakfei. If one throws it down and stands it up, throws it down and stands it up, says Rashi, halichei amis harber b'rishus harabim. He carried it many amis from Rishus harabim. Ke'inyan hazeh shalei notlei kulim en akarka. In such a manner that he didn't take the whole thing from the ground. Rather, he straightened it up, he stood it up and threw it down. And again, he stood it up and threw it down. Says Rashi, Ein zu akira, this isn't an akira.